Thank you, Madam Deputy President. I do have a number of other questions that I want to put to Senator Hanson, but before I do so, I might just try to put this debate that we're having at the moment in some context. Let's be honest about what's happening here. What's happening here is that Senator Hanson and her colleagues are now scurrying back into this chamber to try to fix the mess that they created last night. They have been shamed into coming back into this chamber to reverse cuts to pensions and cuts to allowances that they voted for only last night. And in Senator Hanson's case, she voted for them twice. This is just the latest example we are seeing from Senator Hanson and her One Nation colleagues in their ongoing campaign to sell out the very battlers that they say they are here to represent. This has been happening for so long, ever since Senator Hanson and her colleagues came to this chamber after the double dissolution. We've seen it on a range of workplace matters. Senator Hanson and her One Nation colleagues voted for the government's ABCC legislation, and what was buried in there was that Senator Hanson, despite all of her xenophobic remarks, criticising foreigners and criticising migrants, in voting for the ABCC legislation, what Senator Hanson and her colleagues did was make it easier for construction companies to bring in temporary overseas workers to replace local workers. So if that's not selling out the battlers that she says that she represents, I don't know what is. In also voting for the ABCC legislation, Senator Hanson and One Nation also voted to cut apprenticeships in the construction industry. The young battlers, who they say that they're here to represent, they've actually cut the floor out from underneath them by reducing the number of apprenticeships that are available to young people in the construction industry. And also in voting for that ABCC legislation, Senator Hanson and her One Nation colleagues made it a hell of a lot easier for construction companies to bring in labour hire and keep people in insecure work. These are the people that Senator Hanson and her colleagues say that they are here to represent. People in regional Queensland in particular and outer suburban areas who are really struggling to make ends meet, who are on labour hire rather than permanent work, who are in casual employment rather than permanent work, who are struggling to get an apprenticeship, and through Senator Hanson's own votes, she's actually making it harder for these people still by removing what opportunities they do have. Who can forget that we've seen them do it as well on penalty rates? There's been a number of occasions now where we on the Labor side have given One Nation and Senator Hanson the opportunity to stop cuts to penalty rates from going ahead. But over and over again they vote with the government to let these penalty rate cuts go through, to cut money out of the pockets of the battlers that they say they're here to represent. We've seen them do it on childcare by voting with the Liberals to cut childcare payments to low-income families, and we've seen them do it again on labour hire by refusing to back amendments that Labor moved that would have held host employers liable for underpayments to workers made by labour hire firms. These people are the biggest bunch of hypocrites this Australian parliament has ever seen. They spend every day out there, particularly in regional Queensland, claiming that they're the friend of battlers, claiming that they're going to come down here to Canberra and sort out the major parties, and every single chance they get, they line up and vote with Malcolm Turnbull and the Liberals to cut money out of the pockets of the very people they say that they represent. I'm actually surprised that it's only about 85% of the time that Senator Hanson and One Nation vote with the government. You would actually think it's 100%. They might as well just go and join the Liberal Party today, which is where Senator Hanson came from in the first place. If you're going to come down here and continue voting with the Liberals to hurt battlers, to allow more 457 visas into construction sites, to cut apprenticeships, to hurt labour hire workers, to cut childcare to low-income families, and now to cut bereavement allowances, why don't you just go back and join the Liberal Party? You might as well do that, since you're voting with them all the time. And here again on this very bill, we're seeing yet again Senator Hanson and One Nation sell out the battlers that they say they represent. And they might sit there and smirk about it. It's actually not funny. It's not funny that you get out there into regional Queensland and tell people that you're going to protect them, and you come down here and leave them in the lurch by voting for with the Liberal Party over and over again. It's not funny, it's dishonest, and you should be ashamed of the fact that you keep on doing it. These people have a right to be represented in the way that you say that you're going to, not sold out every time you come down here to Canberra. So on this bill, let's just cut through the nonsense that we've been seeing from Senator Hanson and her colleagues all day today and here tonight. They're trying to proclaim this as some massive win that they've been able to engineer for pensioners. What has actually happened here is they've been caught out yet again selling out the battlers that they say they represent. Last night we had the farcical situation in this chamber where 2 of the 3 One Nation senators weren't here for a vote. The vote was put, a Green amendment I think it was, that was backed by Labor to try to protect this bereavement allowance. The Greens voted to protect bereavement allowances. Labor voted to do so. Senator Hinch mentioned that he did. I'm not sure about some of the other crossbenchers. All of us were actually standing up for the battlers that you say that you represent. Senator Hanson came over here and sat with the Liberals, voted to cut the bereavement allowance altogether, and 2 of our senators couldn't even be bothered showing up. And then we had this pathetic situation where they come into the chamber. One says that he was detained inadvertently, and one said he was in the toilet. So then, not only did they vote to cut this bereavement allowance once, they demanded that it be put to the vote again so that they could actually get the numbers up and guarantee that this bereavement allowance could be cut once and for all. So don't pretend that you're in here trying to help battlers, trying to protect the bereavement allowance. What you're actually doing is coming up and fixing the mess that you created last night by voting with the Liberals not once but twice. You have the only reason this has happened is because you have been shamed into it. I and a number of other people were out on social media very loudly last night pointing out what you did. And I noticed, Senator Hanson, that you spoke to the minister about this amendment last night. I bet that was after you'd been exposed for being a fraud yet again, for selling out the battlers that you say that you represent again. I see you nodding there. Is that correct?
You spoke to the. I remind you to direct your remarks to the chair.
Okay. I see Senator Hanson nodding there, so I'd be interested to know if it's correct that she only actually bothered to talk to the minister about this after her selling out of battlers yet again had been exposed. So, but as I say, it's bad enough that we get this One Nation crowd coming down to Canberra repeatedly and voting with the Liberals to sell out the battlers that they represent, but then to spend the entire day lying about why they are moving this amendment just makes it even worse. Just be honest. Be honest and admit that you made a mistake, that you sold out the battlers that you represent, you got it wrong, and now you've seen the error of your ways and you're trying to rectify it. Don't get Malcolm Roberts and his tinfoil hat out there trying to pretend it's something different. Just be honest for once. Admit you got it wrong, admit that you're actually going to stand up for the battlers that you say you represent, and you're going to vote with Labor, just like you should have done in the first instance. And maybe you should actually make a habit of it and vote with Labor on a whole range of other things to protect the battlers that you say that you care about. The claim that you are in here today because you care about pensioners and you want to save people is an out-and-out lie. And I'm glad that you've been found out for it, and I'm glad that you've come in here and moved an amendment. But as we've heard, despite this amendment, there are still going to be 30 people a year whose partners die and they need support. We're not talking about rich people. 30 low-income Australians a year are going to die, and their partners, who once qualified for a bereavement allowance to help them pay for a funeral, to help them get back on their feet, they might not even have a job. There are 30 people a year now who are going to be actually worse off still because of the vote that you cast last night. Why aren't you fixing that? Why aren't you making sure that every single person who you sold out last night is going to be no worse off? Why are you still leaving 30 a year still in the lurch? The questions that I've got now are that now that you have seen the error of your ways in relation to the cuts to the bereavement allowance that you voted for last night, what I want to know is, have you got other amendments ready to go now to try to reverse the other cuts that you voted for last night? This was not the only cut to low-income Australians that One Nation voted with the Liberals to get through last night. One Nation last night also voted to cut the wife pension, to cut the widow allowance, to cut the partner allowance, and to make people who are older than 55 now stop volunteering in order to qualify for the dole and make them go out and look for work instead. There's a whole range of other cuts that One Nation voted with the Liberals last night to put through. There are thousands of low-income Australians, battlers, who One Nation say they care about, who are still going to be worse off as a result of all these other cuts that you voted for last night. Are you going to move amendments? Is One Nation going to move amendments to reverse the other cuts that you voted for last night? Or are you going to still leave thousands of people who once got a wife pension and won't anymore, who once got a widow allowance and won't anymore, who once got a partner allowance and won't anymore? Are they going to be fixed up, or are you going to leave them hung out to dry with less money in their pocket, facing a much harder existence? This is not the only sellout that you committed last night. I really hope that you've got other amendments to make up for the sellouts to a range of other people that you committed last night as well. Don't think you get off the hook by fixing one problem when you've created many. We are onto you, and we are going to keep exposing you for the lies and the fraud that you keep on committing every single time you come down here and vote with the Liberals.